Hey, what's up, and welcome back to Interpreting the Stars, where today we're bringing it back to our Karate Kid vs. Three Ninjas movie marathon with the third Karate Kid film. It's Karate Kid Part 3, which I was fully expecting to not remember at all, since I didn't remember anything about the second film, but I did. This one came flooding back when I watched it, which was a refreshing surprise. Plus, I didn't remember how it ended very well, so I was still able to go in fairly blind at the same time, so it was a nice experience. But what does that mean for the end score? If I couldn't remember the second film and could remember the third, does that mean that this one is better? Let's see if this last film with Daniel LaRusso has me feeling histrionic or not. Let's get cracking. This review is brought to you by the word of the day, histrionic. Deliberately affected, aka overly dramatic or emotional. The Karate Kid Part 3 brings Daniel LaRusso and Mr. Miyagi back to California, and Daniel decides not to go to college, but rather start a business with Mr. Miyagi selling the miniature trees that he loves so much. But you see, Cobra Kai is back with a vengeance and wants revenge for making them look like wimps in Part 1. So what was it about this third film that I remembered? Well, I remembered Cobra Kai's return of the new sensei, of Daniel sort of joining Cobra Kai, even the wooden dummy that LaRusso is tasked with bruising himself over. What I didn't remember was the business that he started with Mr. Miyagi, anything about the trees or the end itself. But truthfully, all the stuff that I didn't remember was mostly just rehashing events of the first film anyways. I mean, heck, the entire end sequence just felt like it was plucked from the first movie and recast with different people. It even ends immediately and has no real resolution, just like the first movie. But the thing is, even with all this stuff being rehashed from the first time, it's still easy to see how much more important and impactful that first film was. And heck, how important the second film even was when it came down to respect and honor. This third film kind of took a major step back on the way Mr. Miyagi normally operates. First of all, a big chunk of this movie is built around the idea that instead of going to college with money that he won in Karate Kid 2, he spends it on a building and business, something that Miyagi was very much against. He wanted Daniel to go to college. He wanted that education for the young man that he kind of sees as his own son. But once Daniel crosses that threshold, Mr. Miyagi kind of gives up and is all like, alright then, sounds good to me. When Daniel wants to enter into the karate tournament again to defend his title, Mr. Miyagi's like, no, absolutely not. I don't believe in tournaments. Since when, dude? You trained him for a tournament in Part 1 and made sure that he was ready for a match in the second film. And while we're at it, bringing it back to a tournament for Part 3 kind of lessens the direty of the situation, because in Part 2, there were no rules. It was literally a fight to the death scenario, and it was back to rules and regulation, and the same thing we saw in Part 1 again. So maybe that's why there wasn't a Karate Kid Part 4 with Daniel LaRusso. Looking at my rating model report, it tells me that the people category made safe decisions all around because it basically clung to what the series has already established so far and didn't really take many risks to add to that character development. And it's especially frustrating because the villain of the story didn't seem that original and was mostly rehashing what we've already seen. So the film as a whole felt unoriginal and even forgettable, even though I remembered it more than Part 2 for whatever reason. But thankfully, one of the best things about this series as a whole was still intact, in that it still had a deep and meaningful story, all thanks to Mr. Miyagi, who constantly is perceived as the better man. So even though it's not the best Karate Kid film, there's still a lot to appreciate about it, and it's a plus that I consider the title Karate Kid to hold more weight than the second film, which seemed to focus more on Mr. Miyagi and thus should have been called the Karate Sensei. Let's take a look at the final score for a second. And this is one of those movies that I felt the same for what it was doing on a technical level as well as entertainment. And I'd say in both cases, the movie was fine. It did what it needed to do and told the story that it wanted to tell. But it certainly is nothing that blows your mind in either case. The unbiased score is 70%, which, like I said, isn't anything spectacular. It means that it's decent. Same thing with the bias score of 72%, which again means I had a good enough time with it, but I wouldn't ever rush to buy the film either. These two scores added together and averaged out come to 71%. 71 out of 100 possible stars, granting the Karate Kid Part 3 with a letter grade of C-. So the Karate Kid series is definitely getting lower and lower. We'll see where Three Ninjas takes us next time, but our averages as of now are 77% for Karate Kid and 75% for Three Ninjas, which is very close. So make sure that you don't miss out for my review on Three Ninjas Knuckle Up soon. Subscribe and hit the bell to be notified when I come out with that review. And until then, make sure that you tell me your thoughts on Karate Kid Part 3 in the comments down below. Is this a good addition to the Karate Kid trilogy with Daniel LaRusso? Let me know in the comments. And until next time, peace out.